Hello, welcome to Forest Focus. As Nottingham Forest go into game 31 of the Premier League season with the Champions League place in their grasp, but there's still plenty of work to do with Saturday's opponents, Aston Villa, in flying form ahead of the game at Villa Park. We'll preview the game in full today in the company of, first of all, Mikey Clarke. Mikey, afternoon, how are you?
Afternoon. Yeah, I'm great. Thanks, Matt. How are you?
I am not too bad. Looking forward to a live show tonight. I'll make mention of that in 1 second, but before that, introduce Dan Cook, also well known as Danscape. How are you doing today, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. Glad to be back. I decided that last time I came on, it felt like Dragon's Den because I kind of pitched that Sangare Danilo midfield to Mikey, and it got to the end, and he was just like, "Yeah, thanks for that, but I'm out." So I'll just come back and try again.
Well, Nuno's sort of in. He's loving Danilo at the moment. We'll discuss Sangare a bit. Actually, he's on the list. But yeah, I'm looking forward to. Well, I know what you're saying. We're looking forward to seeing what your team is. I know what your team is. So we'll discuss that in a bit. Just before we do, sorry, hang on. Almost elbowed an entire cup of tea onto a new carpet there. Because I know we put it on my right side, not my left. Right. Anyway, just before that, a quick reminder that we do have our live show tonight. There are still a few tickets left. So if you're looking for something to do, 7 p.m. at the NAV. Lewis is on the panel. He's definitely coming. I always have a blind panic that the guests will text me and say he can't make it, but he's definitely going to be there. So that's a good start. 7 p.m. Tickets are £5. If you want to join us for that, it'd be great to see as many people as possible there. I see a few people in the live chat as well saying they're going to be there tonight. So see you soon. Right, let's get into this game then. We'll get into the specifics around Villa's form and our form and injuries and team news, but just in general, Dan, how are you feeling about it?
Reasonably optimistic, but look, it's the end of a very tough week, isn't it? Like 3 games in a week. I think obviously the injuries started to tell a bit in the United game where we just literally had to cling on to get through that one. So I'm not totally, downbeat on the game because I think Villa have got their own concerns about the number of fixtures they've got and the importance of some of those games. So that can give us a chance. But it might just be a step too far for us this one in terms of back-to-back games. So I'm swaying between yes, let's have a point, and also we can go there and get something.
I am feeling pretty worried about this one relatively to other ones, Mikey, because as Dan referenced there, it does feel like we're on the brink of a few injuries, and we'll get to that later. Dan's got some charts that I think sort of play into that. Villa, I've recorded the Villa opposition podcast with Steve this morning. He's basically saying they're in their best form of the season. They're playing really well. In terms of numbers, 1-6 in a row, clean sheets in 4 in a row, 3-3-0 wins in a row in all competitions. They're playing very well, but they've also got fixture congestions and they're in lots of competitions. Are you as nervous as I am or not?
Yeah, I guess when I was on a couple of weeks ago, I thought to myself, there are 2 games coming up where if we get anything out of them whatsoever, sorry, then it's a bonus. First one was Man City at home, and we came through that because Man City on the day can beat any team in the world, and we managed to come through that. We've since had 2 brilliant results. After that, the next one was Villa. This, without doubt, is, I think, our hardest game remaining of the fixtures. So anything from this game will be an absolute bonus. You saw on Tuesday, they were knackered at the end of that. Dan's right. We were holding on for dear life at the end of that game. The minutes at Brighton caught up with us. I thought the subs were good. Obviously, we'll go into that. But this is a team that's giving absolutely everything that they've got. Like half of them, if you watch the end of that game, for those that recorded it, just watch them. Half of them slumped to the floor because they're absolutely knackered. So we're giving everything. Will it be a step too far? Not sure. Villa played last night, obviously, so they've got 1 day less. But you look at their bench last night, and it was elite. There were some ridiculous players on it. Ollie Watkins, for example, a few others. Not so much our bench. So it'd be really interesting what team he picks. We do have that extra day, but there's no doubt that these lads are giving absolutely everything. And the game on Saturday is going to be so tough. So any sort of result out of it would be a brilliant result for Forest because obviously it keep them at arm's length as well. So I'm worried about it. But not necessarily because they're in good form or we're in bad form, because we're not. It's just because the demands on this small squad are so intense. You could see it in their eyes and in their bodies on Tuesday. And I just hope that the recovery is there in midweek And we go into Saturday and we just give everything we got, because that's all you can ask of them. The guys have been incredible this season, but it's going to be a tough game, no doubt.
Just dipping in the chat, Pat's expecting a backs to the wall game. Big Arn, nervous. Don't think it matters in the overall race for Euro places. We'll get onto that as well. Dan's got the dream tracker. Tim says as well he doesn't think Villa will blow chances like United did. I know United didn't have that many chances, but they had some big chances, and I think I agree with what he's saying there. With all that in mind, Dan, I'm very much in the take a point now, which I haven't been for a while. But when you think like Villa are 9 points behind us, if we draw the game, it's very, very hard for them to get past us. So that's probably as big a reason as any for me in thinking I think a point's a great result. Are you more ambitious than that or not?
Probably slightly. I think that there's a lot against us in it, insofar as their form at the minute. Their home form over the whole season. I think they've only lost one in the league at home. They've drawn quite a few though, so they haven't been as good as us at home. And then our record of going to Villa since we've been promoted, we've struggled there, haven't we? We've not really come close to getting anything out of those games. So there's a lot against us on that side of it. Like you say, it'd be good to keep them at arm's length. Although obviously it depends if you think they're really in the mix for that fifth place anyway, because a point sort of loses us ground on potentially the other sides that are closer, like Newcastle and Chelsea and City in those fixtures. So I'm sort of torn. I mean, I would definitely, if you did offer a point, I would definitely take it because of the injury situation, because of where we are with the squad. I think if we were full strength, I probably wouldn't take it. And I'd say, we've been better than Villa this season consistently. So let's back ourselves. But I just think once you disrupt our back five that's been so good, which we're going to have to do in this game, then it starts to worry me a bit more than it did against United in the week.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. If we had Aina and we had Woods, and my mindset would be different. Just before we go into those stats and our lineups, the bookies really don't like us again. I'm always surprised by this. I know it's based on algorithms and statistics and everything. They've got Villa scoring 1.75 goals to our 1.23. It's the spread betting, which is quite interesting. I mean, I know I sound negative, Mikey, but there's still no reason to think we can't go there and win with our quality. Hudson-Odoi will be back. Ilanga's looks like he's on absolute fire. If Nuno's clever with his bench options again, then there's no reason to think we can't win the game, obviously, is there?
No, absolutely not. We have got the weapons in our side to trouble any team. As we've proven, we don't need a great amount of possession. We don't need constant attacking. We play in moments, don't we? We play on the transition, and we suck teams in, so to speak, and then destroy them. What was the Ilanga start? Was it something like 90 meters in 9 seconds, something like that? I mean, that's just absolutely ridiculous. So if you're watching that and you're Aston Villa, you're thinking, blimey, with our high line, blimey, you're going to cause some problems. So there's no reason we can't go there and score. And I think we're going to have to, because I can't see Villa not scoring at Villa Park, especially if we're losing some of our defenders, as we'll speak about on the teams. So I think it'll be a good game. And I think there's no reason to go and fear. Dan touched on an interesting point about our record at Villa since we've been back up. It's not been great, but then we've never had this team, have we? With this sort of spirit and vibe that's running throughout the team and the city. We've never been in this space, have we? Where we can go to Villa and we know they're going to be looking at us thinking, previous to this, in previous systems, they'd be looking, going, right, how many do we get? How high do we want this line? Because they're not going to trouble us, So it's a whole different conversation. So regardless of all the injuries that we have and the fact they're a bit knackered, we will trouble them, as we will trouble every single team for the rest of the season. So I'm positive. I think we can go there and absolutely trouble them and get something. We just have to play in those moments, make sure we're clinical when we do get the chances, and then just ride our luck a little bit. Because let's be honest, we did on Tuesday. Sells didn't make many saves, but the amount of half chances they had, crosses into the box, shots just going wide, it just seems as if we can get the first goal, I always fancy to get something from the game. And I think the first goal on Saturday is going to be crucial. But let's not be fearful of this team. Villa are in good form, but they are fighting on a lot of fronts, still in the Champions League, still in the FA Cup like us. I still think they've got a chance for Champions League, Matt, I do, honestly, especially if they beat us. So they're pushing and they're giving everything as well. So it should be a great game.
We'll come to Dan's Champions League chart. We'll do the Dream Tracker next, actually. But just before that, thank you very much to Scott Nottingham for signing up for membership. Appreciate that, Scott, and anyone else that signed up at any point ever. That's very good of you. What shirt are you wearing today, Mikey, by the way?
It is a Sorrento shirt. I think they're third tier. I think I wore it a few
Probably
months
should have
ago.
guessed that. It says Sorrento written all over the front of it.
It's a Sorrento shirt. We got promoted the year I went there on holiday, and the ground reminded me of Eastwood Town's old ground, Coronation Park. So I thought I'll buy the shirt. And I quite like the shirt. It looks like AC Milan, doesn't it? It's quite good.
Doesn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
I thought it was AC Milan, to be honest, initially when I logged on and saw it. Right, let's go to the Dream Tracker because Mikey referenced teams in the Champions League race. I've put it full screen to try and magnify the thing in the bottom corner. I'll just tee it up for Dan shortly, but you can see if you're listening, not watching, we're nicely above the line where we need to be for qualifying for Champions League football with a green line at the top. Dan has kindly and cleverly put in the bottom right corner of this graphic how many points per game the other teams need. I guess, Dan, you can explain this, but that's based on historical averages of how many points per game you think these teams will need. So just talk us through the chart in the bottom right corner, if you would.
Yeah, so what that's based on is a points target of 66 points, which is actually a couple less than the usual fifth place finish. So the reason for that is that this season it does look like it's going to be about 65, 66 points if teams carry on with the current form that we've seen for the season so far. So with that in mind, you can then see that that means we need 9 points basically to get to that 66 total. Newcastle would need 16. Obviously, they've got the extra game on us. So points per game wise, though, it still means that they need to better us by about 50%. They need to still be a lot better than us to really get to that total compared to what we need, which is just over a point per game, basically. And as you go down the chart, you can obviously see that the likes of at the other end, Bournemouth now would need to be, more than twice as good as us to get to that points total. Fulham similarly, even Villa have to pretty much double what our form needs to be from now to the end of the season to go above us in that hunt for getting to 66 points. So it's one of those, isn't it? Like I'm the same in that you worry about what's left, but the gap that we've put in place, and other than a complete collapse and another team really, really hitting form, it's whatever happens, it's going to be tight. But there is that gap there whereby as long as we can, like I say, pretty much just stay above relegation form, we're going to be in the mix. And I think we're bound to do better than that when you look at obviously some of the games we've got coming up. So it's all positive, definitely. And I think it's just a couple of results over the next couple of weeks for the likes of Newcastle, City, and Chelsea will really give us a picture of how tight it's going to be.
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting when you see that table there. It qualifies what a good position we're in. I'm still massively confident. It's just this game does worry me. But when you see that, as Dan says, Villa need to get average about 2.25 points per game just to get to 66 points. So that's why this game feels like they've got to win it. And maybe that presents us some opportunities because if we can get a point, that really, really damages them. It's hard to see when you look at this chart as well. I mean, Brighton are well placed still, but it looks really pretty grim for them. And Fulham and Bournemouth, you can probably rule them out of it realistically. So yeah, we're certainly in a very good place. Right, I shall remove that, and then Dan's got a couple of other interesting charts just around players used and things like that, because it will lead into my slight concern that we might pick up a few more injuries. But just before that, a reminder: this game is on TV, so you can watch it at the Nav, 5:30 kickoff. Big screen outdoors, screens throughout the pub as well, and you can get your dinner there, make a day of it. The weather will be lovely, so yeah, do enjoy the game if you're not going at the Nav. And then join us for our post-match show afterwards as well with, I think it's Mark and Savina doing that one. So, yeah, it should be good. Right, let's tee up your other charts here, Dan. I'm a bit worried that Aina popping his calf or whatever, we'll find out what he's done, but it's a sign of too many minutes. And I'm just concerned that we'll get more. So, obviously, on one hand, our kind of small squad, tight core, using the same players is fantastic. But there might be a bit of a trade-off to make. There might not be, of course, but Dan's kindly provided some numbers around how many players we've actually used. So I'll put this first one up. Is this the best one, Dan, about players playing over 70 minutes, or this one about total?
Yeah, start with that one, yep.
Okay, so this is number of players used in total, and Dan's added in. At the top is the team is this season for us, and then he's added in how many players we used first season and second season in the Premier League. So yeah, take it away, Dan.
Yeah, so it's as you describe it there. So it's just how many players are featured in the league for each team this season. So you can see we have used the fewest players with 23 so far this season. There's a group of teams like Newcastle, Arsenal, Liverpool that have only used one more player than us, which is kind of similar because I think ultimately we haven't had to use our backup goalkeeper, for example. If we did that in the league, that would put us in that same ballpark. So we're not extremely far apart from those teams, but we are at that end of the table, whereas when you go down the bottom, you've got the likes of Southampton, Ipswich and Spurs who are using 31, 32, 34 players across the season, so 10 more than us. And obviously you can see that's where we've been over the previous 2 seasons, is that we've had to really shuffle the pack and use like 10 more players in each of those seasons than we have so far this season, which does, of course, mean that the players in there are racking up the minutes. And I think Aina, before the Man United game, Aina had got the most minutes in the league out of anyone, apart from Sells, obviously, in goal. And then just drilling down into it. So rather than looking at, the kind of fringes of the squad, this is just how many players in each squad have played, over 70% of the minutes in the league. And again, you can see we're at the top of that list. And this is where there's sort of more variance between the teams at either end, because you've got 9 of our players have basically been the stalwarts in that starting lineup, played most of the minutes. Liverpool have actually got 10 players, so they've been the most consistent in their team selection. And then it drops down, and you can see that the teams that have struggled compared to expectations is Spurs and Man City, who've only got 3 players that have played, at least 70% of the minutes there, which is crazy for them, because usually, like Man City are fairly consistent in the league. They rotate, but they'll still have a core of players that would be up there with 8 or 9 players that regularly start for them. And again, you can see where our past 2 seasons fall is right down the other end of the chart from where we are now. So this season we've got 9 players that play almost every game or minute, and then the other 2 seasons, especially the first season we came up, there's only 2 players that delivered more than 70% of the minutes, which would have been, I presume, probably Gibbs White, and can't think who else it would be off the top of my head now, but it's a massive change from 2 to like 9 players that are now established, playing week in, week out in the league. And I think it leads to success. There is a bit of a correlation between, obviously, when you've got good players and they're playing well, then you don't mix and match, but it does also put the pressure on the injuries.
Is this outfield players, by the way? Does it include keepers?
It will include keepers, I think. Could be wrong. I think.
Yeah, I was wondering who the 2 or 3 were, but we changed keepers anyway repeatedly in those first 2 seasons, so it doesn't really make much difference. I think the key point, Mikey, is I think Dan. I was going to say I think Dan's right. I'd much rather it were this way than the other way, even if it does make me a bit twitchy about injuries. I think this is the better route to success, isn't it? Having this stable starting 11.
Yeah, these charts tell me a couple of things. So, firstly, it tells me that those first couple of seasons we were searching for a formula that worked. So we'd used a hell of a lot of players, almost more than anybody else. Yet you look at this chart here, for those that are watching, and only 2 or 3 of them are regulars. So we were chopping and changing. We were searching for a formula. We were trying everything to try and keep our heads above water. We flipped 180 degrees, as Dan was saying. We now have the smallest amount of players used, pretty much. But within that core, you've got 9 players that play every week. So I find that you've literally gone from polar opposites, haven't you? One extreme to the other. And that says a lot about what we're doing as a football club. It says a lot about the smart recruitment. It says a lot about the players that have left the club as well, not necessarily been replaced. And it says that we've got a basis to build from in the next few seasons. What really shocked me on this, a couple of things actually. Dan, I think you just picked up on it. Man City, that's really, really interesting. Man City. So they, you'd think they would have a core, wouldn't you? But they don't. They only have 2 or 3 players that played, and that says a lot about their struggles this season. So I love stuff like this, because you think you know from watching it, don't you? But when you look at the data that underpins it, it kind of either completely blows your theory out of the water, or on this occasion, it kind of backs it up as well. Can I just go back to the first chart as well? Because I found that really interesting. I don't know whether you can get it up on screen, Matt. Don't worry if you can't.
It's on screen.
Ah, yes, so it is. Apologies. Yeah. Again, look, number of players used. Southampton at the bottom, 30 floor. So they've gone the same route as us in the first 2 seasons. They're chucking everything out, trying to find guess who's above them. Ipswich Town, with their huge recruitment. It's just really, really interesting. It kind of backs up what you think as well. So I know we're going to talk about injuries in a second, but with the fundamental shift that we've had in our squad and with the fact that they now have a group of core players that are relied on every week, guess what? You're going to get injuries because they're going to play all the time. And luckily, touch wood, we've been okay up until the last couple of weeks, but we're going to go into these next few, the last few weeks of the season, nursing some of these players. And you've seen they've got it in the legs, haven't they? They've struggled in recent games. So let's hope that this strategy is just enough to get us over the line. And also, one more thing while I'm at it, the first one you did, Dan, the actual first one about the Champions League one. Sorry, the other one, Matt. That's it, the Greg Mitchell Dream Tracker. So I look at the table now. Does anybody else do this? I look at the table and think, right, we're what, 6-7 points clear? Oh my word, if we lose 2, that the teams below us are going to get us. But actually, the reality is what Danny's saying is these teams need to be perfect to make up that gap. I thought before the Man U game, we needed to win 4 more games to get us there, and we beat Man U. So 3 more games is 9 points. And Dan, I think you said 66 points, which is actually bang on what I was thinking. Yeah. So I just think for anybody that's panicking or say we have a bad result on Saturday, have a look at this again and just see it's not all about necessarily us failing. The teams below have to pick up those points, and that's not guaranteed. And if you look at the fixtures, they're all playing each other. So I think we're in an incredible position. And that's given me more heart now than maybe that I had before, because you see the permutations, don't you? And you think, oh, actually, if Forest do struggle, this needs to happen. And there's so many things that need to fall into place. You were talking about, was it Brighton or Newcastle have to get 2-point-something points again? Well, that's not going to happen. So I think we need 3 more wins. It's all looking really, really positive for Forest. I love that, Dan. That's great. You can come on more often, mate. That was really interesting.
I've passed the Dragon's Den this time.
Yeah.
Well, I've not done the lineup yet.
Well, we'll come to lineups next. Just to say, Nuno's doing his press conference normally in about an hour from now, so we'll get updates on Ola and Chris Wood as well. It sounds like slightly more promising. I was very worried last time. I don't think he'll play in this one, but he's not a million miles away. So we'll do our lineup shortly. Just on upcoming fixtures that Mikey referenced there. I think I said this today, but I'll do it again. I'll look at next week's fixtures as well. This week, fixtures of note. Where shall we start? Chelsea are at Brentford, tricky game. City are at United, again a tricky game. Newcastle go to Leicester, so that one's a total write-off. So I'd expect, Leicester to Newcastle to win that one massively. Right, the week after is the week where we're all Crystal Palace fans, I think, because Man City are at home to Crystal Palace on the Saturday, and then on the Wednesday, Newcastle are at home to Palace, and Chelsea play Ipswich that week. So again, you'd expect them to win that one, and Newcastle have got Man United as well. So Newcastle have got 2 games. They're playing their game in hand. So next week is a really big week as well. Right, let's look at some lineups then that these chaps have sent in. I've done one as well. The personnel was the same for both Dan and Mikey. So I shall put that on the screen, let them talk through it, and then I'll go through mine as well. The formations are different, but I've just done one graphic because I'm lazy. So I'll put this up. So this is Dan's team and formation. Roughly, it's slight intricacies around the wingers, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Sells, Williams, Milenkovic, Murillo, and Toffolo on the assumption that Aina is out. Dominguez, Gibbs-White, Anderson in midfield. Elanga and Hudson-Odoi wide in support of Taiwo Awoniyi. And Dan, a few interesting names there, but just general thoughts before we pick out a few individuals.
I suppose the main thing is the shape. I think, in general terms, it's whether you go for the back 5, back 3. I think some people probably thinking in this one you go more defensive and you try and cover the lack of Aina at fullback by adding in another defender in the middle. I didn't fancy it, to be honest. I don't think that suits Villa. So, I tried to stick as close to what we've been successful with in this game. But I think I think Gibbs White has to play a deeper role. That's why I've shown it as a 4-3-2-1 as opposed to the usual 4-2-3-1 that we tend to do. I think we're going to have to sit in and clog the midfield in this one.
Mikey, you're the same. You've gone a bit more 4-2-3-1, but I guess you're going to tell me there's intricacies and Gibbs White will drop in and stuff like that.
100%. And the reason that I've gone with this team is to get the two wingers in because of their high line. You know, I said it in the home game that we played against them as well. And we're going to have to score. I can't see us keeping them out for 100 minutes at Villa Park. It's just very rarely that they don't score at home. So the best way to, and I'm teaching people to suck eggs here, but the best way to get something from the game is to do what we've done 23 times this season and take the lead. And I just think with Alanga and Hudson-Odoi on the wings, their high line is crazy. I've always thought it was crazy. We can get in behind them and we can try and nick and try and go in front. I'm obviously assuming Aina's not going to play. I did think about getting Yatesy in there, but I just think that if it's close, I think he can come on and break the game up and do what we need to do, especially if we're trying to hold on to a lead or protect a point. So I also thought last night, I think I've come full circle because if you would have asked me this last year with a team, I'd have gone back 6 or something like that just to try and keep in. But now I'm thinking, oh, we'll go there and score. You know, we need to score. And that's the faith that me and a lot of others have got in this team. And I do think we need to score. So let's set out as we mean to go on. Let's play the back four that's been so brilliant. Of course, Toffolo's going to come in there, but that's why he's in the squad. He's going to have to play. Let's try and take the lead and let's sit in. But I do agree with Dan. I think there'll be periods in the game where when Rodgers drops deeper or Jacob Ramsey comes in off the left as well, and that Asensio is a ridiculous player. I don't know how they've got him. So if those three are milling around the midfield area, we're going to struggle to get the ball. So Gibbs White's going to have to come deep. And that's the way I see the game going. Villa 70% possession, pressing us as being ridiculously quick on the break and trying to exploit their high line. And whoever gets in the lead first, you then play the game state, don't you? And hopefully it's us.
I'll ask you, I was looking at Morato's stats here to see about him playing left back. Now, we all remember Niakate playing left back at Villa, absolute car crash. Morato, though, last season played an absolute ton of games at left back for Benfica, twice in the Champions League. He played in the Europa League. Just looking in the Portuguese league where he played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And he played almost all his games at left back in the Portuguese league. What about Morato playing left back, Dan?
It's definitely. I considered it. I just thought for this one, we'd probably want him to come on and shore things up if we get the lead, like Mikey says, which will be key. Is if we can get ahead, then we know we can add him in fresh later on. It's definitely a consideration. Like the trouble with this game is that Villa are so good on the wings, especially at the minute with Rashford kind of back in confidence. It's those wide areas that are the problem. So if there's any game where you'd like your first choice fullbacks, it's probably this game. Yeah. So it is definitely a concern that the pace that they're going to have and the overlap that they have with Matty Cash potentially on that side, Luca Digne or Maatsen, they're both very attacking fullbacks on the left side as well. So it's definitely a game where I prefer to have the full strength fullbacks. I don't think it's a game for Moreira just because it's away from home in particular at Villa. You know, it's just too difficult a game to introduce him. So it was pretty much between Toff or throwing in Morato. Or look, the way Nuno is, you never know. There might be another rogue shout for going for the back three and playing someone like Dominguez as a right wing back potentially, and then keeping Williams on the left. You know, there are. I think I looked at some of his team selections when he was at Wolves, and he played Traore as a right wing back at times in a back three and stuff. So there's potential for Nuno to pull out one of his masterclasses, something that we're not expecting. But I think I just went for tried and tested with Toffolo in his position and thought, let's just go for experience. It's one game, he can just leave it all out there and get us through this game.
I do agree about Moreira. I know people saying he could play in the FA Cup semi-final and things like that. I think I'd worry he's not quite ready for that personally. I mean, Morato, he doesn't look a left back, but he's got a lot of experience there. I suppose how many games he's played, so that is interesting. As Peter has kindly said here, there's 300 people with us, which is great. Do us a favour and hit like if you haven't already. We very much appreciate it. The other name, I guess, to know, Mikey, is Ryan Yates is missing. I mean, obviously he's playing very, very well. Is this just we've got to be judicious with the squad and how we use them?
Yeah, I think so, and it's not a slight on him that I haven't picked him for this game, or I'm sure Dan will say the same. I just think he played 120 minutes at Brighton. He was absolutely phenomenal on Tuesday night. He probably just needs a bit of a rest, a bit like what they took Dominguez out, didn't they? I think Dominguez is ready to come back, and I just think if we can bring Yatesy on after about 60 minutes and the game's still really, really tight, that will really suit them, and he can manage the rest of that game. I've just got a feeling I know how this game's going to go, and it might be a little bit of a chess match, so to speak, with, like I said, us soaking it up and them springing. And I just think they need to win. And you've said that, Matt, and I think you're right. So if it's still level, or God willing, we're in the lead, and they bring on a Ollie Watkins, it's frightening, or they bring on somebody else, that's when you bring Yatesy on to slow it down, to get the niggly fouls in, to manage the game, to get all over Asensio, make sure he's not pulling the strings in the last half an hour, which is where most games are won and lost these days. So yeah, not a slight on him at all. He was magnificent on Tuesday. I just think horses for courses, this is the game you've got to get both the wingers in the team for me against that Villa back line. You have to. You've got to score at Villa Park to get anything. And the best way to score is to play them. And I just think Yatesy misses out on this occasion because I'd drop Gibbs White a little bit deeper. But squad game, isn't it? Even though we spoke about earlier on, we've not used many players. Every single player is really important to us. Yatesy more so than probably half of them. So yeah, it's going to be. I'm gutted I can't go actually, but I really wanted to go to this one. I just think we've not given a great account of ourselves at Villa Park since we've gone up. It's about time we did.
Yeah, what were the scores there? I mean, one of them was the Newcastle left back Shelby. Yeah,
Shelby incident.
Yeah, 2-0 and 4-2 was it?
Yeah, that 4-2 game though, we were kind of in it at one point. We were coming back into the game, and then we kind of missed quite a good chance from what I remember, and then they kind of pulled away from us again on that. Just quickly on the formation as well. I thought against Man United when we switched to the back three, it felt like that first season when we were playing with the back three, and the midfield two just had too much work to do. Like Yatesy was having to do the job of two players, trying to constantly try and cut off the supply line to Garnacho on the left. And I just think if you set up like that again in this game with the back three and you leave that space, but it's Rashford instead of Garnacho at the minute in that position, I think you get punished. So I just think it's definitely one like Mikey saying, it's all about the midfield chess game. It definitely was at the City Ground, which I thought was one of our best performances of the season. All of it, because we actually had a lot of possession and we were confident on the ball. We kind of took the game to them in the middle there, and it's just both teams, with the high line, just waiting for a little bit of space to try and exploit. And it didn't really happen in that game till the end when we were chasing it. But I think that performance has to give us some hope. It's just legs and minutes and tiredness.
I wouldn't have cut the supply enough to go on Nacho. I'd have let him have the ball more and more and more, to be honest. I know what you're saying. Hello to Tim, by the way, and anyone who's international watching this. I know it's very early start for some people, or late if you're in different parts of the world, but Tim's in Texas. I assume this has just been announced, Steve Battlemuch posting here. Brentford moved to the 1st of May, which is a day later than I thought it might be. I don't know what day of the week that is. And the Leicester game's been moved to the Sunday. Is that official, Steve? You can drop that in or I'll check my phone. Yeah, we'll do that. I'll pick that up in 1 second. Right, I've got another lineup to show us. This is something that I've put together. But before that, thanks very much to Home Move Estate Agents and Ben Sales. As ever, if you're looking to buy or sell in the Nottingham area, give Ben a shout. You can see his email address on screen, ben@homemoveea.co.uk. Link is in the description if you want to check out the houses they've got on sale. So thanks very much for their support as ever. Right, let's put up the team that I've done. I'm not necessarily saying this is my team, but it's an alternative and something that I think we might consider. Sells in goal, back three, Milenkovic, Murillo, Morato. Wing backs, Williams, could be Dominguez. Danilo, could be Toffolo, could be Williams. Anderson and Yates in midfield. And then Elanga and Gibbs White sort of in behind Awoniyi, but more, it's very fluid as Nuno's come to bring to the party with Elanga all over the shop and Gibbs White dropping deep. That's some thinking there. I don't know, Mikey. What do you reckon around just on the formation and the wing back plan? The thinking is, as Dan said, that you cover the absence of Olorina, basically.
Yeah, and I did consider going to a 3. I'll be honest, but I just think they'll have too much if we do. And you start the game just by dropping off 20 yards, and Danilo will flip back and Williams will flip back, and then essentially our way to score a goal gets diluted. They will probably want us to play that, so they can have Asensio on the ball running things. They can have Jacob Ramsey and Morgan Rogers, Rashford, Watkins when he comes on. That'll be too much for us, I think, in 100 minutes of football. If we start like this, doesn't mean we can't finish it. Just to ask these guys to defend for 100 minutes against this lot at Villa is just going to be, I think, too hard. We need to look to try and score a goal and try and take the lead in the game. And also, there's no Callum in that team, is there? And I just think it just dilutes anything we've got going forward, and we need to pose a threat to them. So I watched the Merseyside derby last night, if anybody else watched it. And the difference between Moyes' team and Dyche's team is Moyes' team, it's the same in the fact that it's drilled and there's a work ethic there, and it's basically like a 4-4-2, 4-5-1. The difference is, though, they pose a threat on the break. Like Beto looks like the Beto he didn't look like when he was under Dyche. And they posed a threat on the break. And to be honest, they should have been leading at half-time that game. And a goal disallowed, hit the post. They posed a threat. So when they get the ball, they break. And it always gave Liverpool something to think about. And Liverpool really didn't get fluid until the second half. And we need to do the same at Villa. That's my point. If we start like this, the times will kick in, we'll drop off, and we'll pose less of a threat. And therefore, they'll step up even further if that's possible and just swarm us. I just think we just need to be in their heads and pose a threat with Elanga and Callum Hudson-Odoi and Gibbs White threading those balls through. And I just think this kind of dilutes it a little bit. So not saying you can't go to this, Matt, and especially if we're winning in the second half, I probably would. I'd probably go quite quick to this. But I just think we need to try and take the lead. And with that, you've got to be positive, I think.
I don't mind the no Hudson-Odoi thing. I'm quite happy to leave one of them on the bench. I think the concern is around, I don't know if it would work. I think it probably would, actually. Danilo would be a worry. But he did play at Brighton, Dan, in a sort of a left, slightly withdrawn role. And I thought he played quite well at Brighton. I was happy with his performance. It's just Tuesday, he wasn't quite there, obviously. What do you think about Danilo as a wing-back? A complete dud or not?
I love Danilo as a player, but from what I saw against Man United, he just didn't look to have the fitness. And I don't know if that's just because it was 2 games close together. Obviously, it's just the time he's had out, but he just seemed to be really struggling to cover the ground, to get back and forward. So putting him in wing back for me, he has to do even more of that potentially than if he's in a central role. I think it suited him when we played Brighton at home because he just sat and played that holding role, just covering the sort of 10-yard space. He wasn't having to bomb forward and back, and I think that's probably where he's at in terms of his recovery. Is he's not able to do what he used to do in terms of bombing forward, bombing into the box, and then still getting back. He was probably our most athletic player at that point, but I think it's just time that he needs to get back to that level. So I probably wouldn't go for him at fullback or wing back. I'm out on that one.
No, that's fair. I did throw this together quite quickly, and to me, it makes more sense. Leaving Dominguez out seems a bit silly if you to get Danilo in. So you'd switch the wing backs. Dominguez would do a really good job on that right side. So I don't mind the formation. But I would switch those wing backs as mentioned. That is official, by the way, about moving those games that Steve mentioned. The first is a Thursday, so we were playing Thursday night and then Monday night away to Palace. So it's not like there's, it's not condensing the games too much. So that's not terrible. It does come after the FA Cup semi-final, though.
I think we're not too bad the next couple of games, though. We've got a full week to Everton, and then we've actually got 9 days from Everton to Spurs, I think. So after this game, we have got a little bit of time to rest and recover before it gets busier again.
Yeah, and in that time, Villa are playing Champions League and things like that, which plays into the whole narratives again. Either of you chaps got anything more you want to say about the game before we move on? No,
not about the game, but can I just go off on a tangent just slightly, really quickly. So I was quite annoyed at some of the press coverage from after the game. So I always download a load of podcasts after Forest play just to see what people are saying all over the country. And I listened to some national podcasts yesterday, and it's almost like they've never seen us play. I don't know what they wanted. So it was like, oh, they went 1-0 up and then sat in a low block. Yeah, that's kind of what we've been doing all season, pretty much to that extent. You know, and we did offer quite a lot. And it's up to Man U to score, and they didn't. So I had a quick look at the scores this season in our home games. Palace, we won 1-0. Spurs, we won 1-0. Ipswich, we won 1-0. Man City, 1-0. Man United, 1-0. Have they never watched us? Like, this is what we do. We try and get in the lead, and then we manage the game. You know, we still push, we still try. But at the end of the day, they need to score. And it's this game's about winning. It's about trying to get us in the Champions League. It's about trying to win an FA Cup. Like, we don't have the resource and the riches at this point in time to throw an Ollie Watkins on, or to throw a whoever on that costs £100 million. We just don't have it. We put a midfielder up front for the last 10 minutes. Like, that's where we are. So I just thought, even now, even with 8-9 games to go, people still don't get it, still don't get what we're about. And it really, really irritated me, because when are they going to get it? When we actually qualify for the Champions League? When we win the FA Cup? You know, when do we get this, you know, recognition that there is more than one way to win a football game? There's more than one way to skin a cat. You don't all have to play 70% possession, popping it around, tiki-taka, false nines, all this rubbish. You know, you can play with a centre forward. You can play quick, fast attacking football. You can love to defend. And that's what we're all about. And I have to say, the crowd on Tuesday was fantastic as well. So well done for everybody that went down. It was a awesome night. But sorry, I just had to get that off my chest. It's just really irritating. Like, come on, we're third. Give us some credit.
I did have one last point, actually, that I forgot to raise. I'll throw it at Dan. I said I'd mentioned Sangare and Sosa coming off the bench and looking pretty bright, I thought. I mean, the part of the Sangare slant is he played that really good ball, but he did show he's got something different in his toolbox, I guess. Just briefly, Dan, your thoughts on those two? Would you like to see more of them, or do you think they're fine, just 5 minutes here and there?
I'd definitely like to see more of Sosa. I don't think whatever he's done when he's come on and been on the pitch has been an issue at all. I think, you know, the fact he's not been in the squad for me must be what he's doing in training, or, you know, some off the field issues, because whenever he's on, he looks like he gives everything and he's positive and confident for someone that's new to this league. So I thought he did that again. You know, he could have perhaps done a little bit better with one of the runs where late in the game, but he still went forward. He had no, he didn't come on and just shy away from things. So that was great to see. Sangare, I didn't notice him a lot in the game when he came on. You know, it was kind of good to have his strength, and he was competing for headers and stuff like that, which was good. But I can't say I really noticed him until that ball to Williams, which was brilliant. But for me, that was not enough to judge him. I think if we've got time on the ball and stuff like that, he's a great player. But when it's that thing of when we're up against it and teams are running at us, I'm just not sure on his pace still that he can keep up with some of these top quality players in this league that try and run at you through the middle of the pitch. So TBC still on Sangare's return, I think. But I still think, you know, next season, hopefully he's back to his best.
I think that's part of the thing, is what we keep saying next season. But I know there's so much context around him. But yeah, Dominguez and Yates feel, and obviously Anderson feel, some distance ahead right now. But fortunes can change so quickly. Like we were discussing, Yates is relatively poor form. Dominguez had about 3 or 4 games where he looked way off it, and now they're both playing well. So yeah, we'll see what the tide brings in the final 8 games or whatever. But right now it's Dominguez and Yates for me. Right, just wrapping up then. Dan is doing his podcast predictors league. This is a labour of love, I'm sure. This is how it stands. We are second to Red Side of the Trent, who've opened up a 1.05 point lead. I'm going to ask Dan to explain the point system if he can at some point. But we're second to them. Talking Reds, Dan's actual podcast, are third, and then it goes down from there. I don't know this week's games, but I think we've lost the slide. I think we predicted 4 and a draw in our podcast. This is the individual one. I don't know. I'll big myself up. I'm joint second. And then from our podcast, Paul is 11th. Mark is 14th. with Temps and Pete all on the same score. Mikey moaned that he wasn't included, but in the WhatsApp group, I gave the opportunity to sign up. So it's entirely on you. Last name at the bottom, friend of the show, who's really part of this podcast as well. I thought I'd really dig him out and throw it in. Chris Aylmer has predicted one correct result in the entire time we've been doing it, which I think is about 8 or 9 games. And that was
8 games,
Ipswich. 8 games, and that was Ipswich away. So I thought that's so bad that it deserves highlighting, Chris, even though you kindly gave us €10, and you're always on this podcast as well. And you're my FPL line of communication as well.
I spent a day trying to convince him that we'd beat Man United on WhatsApp, and he's still stuck with a draw. So it's his own fault.
He's got this absolutely insane misconception of Man United going on FPL. He's always like saying, "Oh, I think I should put the Mazraoui or Dallo or someone in." I'm like, why? They're absolutely rubbish. But yeah, there you go. So that's where we're standing. How on earth do you work out the points for this, by the way, Dan?
So the individual points is fair. Is just 3 points for getting it right, basically. And then there's bonus points to try and make sure people don't all end up on the same points. But the team one, because there's different number of players in each team, I couldn't just do a straightforward sort of total of points. So what I do, there's 3 points available each week, and the percentage of that team that get it right, you just put that percentage against the 3 points. So if everybody gets it right, you get all 3 points. If half of you get it right, you get 1.5 points, and if nobody gets it right, you get no points. So that's the only way I could do it to allow for sort of different number of people in each team. Maybe next season I'll limit it and say it's five in every team or something like that, so we can do it a different way. Because it is odd seeing the decimal places, but there is some logic.
There's about 20 people involved in this podcast, including yourself. So yeah, we'll have to limit it, definitely, I think. Thank you, Tony, for signing up for membership just before we wind down. Appreciate that, Tony Coulton. Very good of you. Right. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to add before we go, Mikey?
Only that really looking forward to the live podcast tonight. As you said, Matt, there's still a few tickets left. So you're looking outside the window now in Nottingham. It's a lovely day. So if you're not doing anything this evening, guys, just come down. It's only £5. Come have a beer. Come listen to Lewis, who's obviously the star of the show. And we're all going to be there as well. So it should be a really, really good night.
Yeah, from 7 p.m. Hopefully see people there. Come and say hello, as mentioned as well. Dan, anything you want to say? Anything you want to plug at all? I'm thinking of your podcast there.
Nah, don't worry about that. Well, yeah, come and check out Talking Reds with some more of these stats and things when I'm on there. And the only other thing I was going to emphasise, I don't think we mentioned enough, is probably that Villa have got this PSG game on Wednesday that might play into our hands if we can actually frustrate them for a while. Their dream will be to go 3-0 up and then start taking players off and rest players. But if we can frustrate them, which we know we're that kind of team, then just imagine how good it'll feel if we win this game in terms of our journey towards, comfortably qualifying for Champions League and like, it'd be absolutely massive because it completely wipes them out and it just makes the task so much harder for everyone else. So I think, just wanted to emphasize that they might be thinking ahead. There's a lot of money at stake for qualifying for the semi-finals of the Champions League, and it might be their best chance to get, an extra 10, 15, 20 million, whatever that's worth in the bank because they're such adrift in the league. So let's put the pressure on them.
They do need the money. When I was speaking to Kieran Maguire yesterday, he name-checked Villa as a team he thought could very likely or very possibly breach PSR, next season. So they need the cash. So that's a fair point, I think, definitely. Right, just quickly from me, there was one other thing. It's the Brighton half marathon at the weekend. I've plugged this before, but it is this weekend. So Adrian Gill, who's a regular listener, suffering from MND, which we all know so sadly about. His daughters are running the half marathon. So I'll put the link in the description if you want to donate to either Hannah or Sarah, I think their names are. But yeah, so I'd plug that for Adrian one last time. We shall be back tomorrow. As mentioned, the opposition preview is already recorded. It'll be out for members this afternoon, so check that out. And then post-match show on Saturday. Right. Dan, thank you very much.
No, thank you. Great to be back. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, really good. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for everyone who watched. Do hit like as well. I know I'm a right boring bastard about that. Sorry, but do hit like. Mikey, thanks very much.
Cheers, thanks. I'm still gutted Dan didn't put Sangare in his team. I was ready to go in on him, but he chose the same team as me. So well done, mate. I don't know whether that makes us both.
That's true. I'll put this point on screen quickly. I mean, Yates wasn't in our team. I think that's all fitness and things like that. We've got to manage our squad. We can't run these players into the ground. So that's part of it, Pie Man, I would imagine, because he's obviously playing very well. Right, we'll leave it there. Have a good day, everyone. If we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.